I'm going to try to make it as short and interesting as possible. I know post-lunch sessions are extremely difficult. So, see, I come from the testing organization from within within Dell services, and when everyone started talking DevOps, naturally I was intrigued myself too, and that's where the research started. I started trying to understand what DevOps mean. A lot of us here are still trying to understand. I know it's been very informative since morning, but from whatever research standpoint, I started doing my own research. I started reading a lot of blogs and Gartner reports, and so the natural process of trying to understand this from a testing perspective is what I started. And then what I actually saw was there was a lot of information on how market was moving to DevOps, a lot of information on how at least 500 organizations were going to go DevOps by so-and-so date. There's a lot of market-owned tools, and there were a lot of drivers. But then I realized the V model still remained V model. It didn't change into a Z or an X, it's still a V. And then the terminologies more or less remain same. Okay, there could be a slight difference. We are talking requirements phase here, we are talking user stories here. So somewhere, the skeleton remained the same, but something had changed, and I had to find out what changed for testing. And that's where I looked at it, and from my standpoint, I found out the differences could actually be in 3 very important areas that impacted business line, that impacted organizations. And that's where, under the people, process, tools, and technology buckets, some of my observations from a traditional standpoint. Today, everybody was, every tester for that matter had a development mindset. Gone are those days wherein the developers and testers were actually at loggerheads. I remember the time when I was actually a part of testing team, and I would be actually fighting with the developer all the time, saying, no, you didn't code it properly, and the tester would come back, the developer would come back to me saying, no, this is, you didn't find the bug. So what I found is the traditional mindset has changed. People no longer take testing as is. They look into what the developer is doing. So there was a change in the mindset. And then tester really didn't do testing these days. I mean, he doesn't really want to do testing alone. He wants to, there is a need for testers to also learn how to script, learn how to understand what the developer is trying to code. So that is where I saw an extremely important change, a shift from the traditional way of doing testing to an agile/DevOps way of testing. And then the most important thing, in a traditional style, testing comes at the end, the fag end of the life cycle, where you just have to, you're just given a build and you just test it and throw the bugs back at the developers. But it was not anymore. Testers and developers started working in tandem. They're actually working together. And we already know agile style of doing things. Now, from a process standpoint, we had this extremely, waterfall style of working. Yeah, the requirements, yes, the design. And yeah, we know it's all agile now. And there's always continuous integration that's happening. And then at some point, only when applications failed in production did the need for testing, performance testing or security testing really came up. But today, it is deemed to be part of the life cycle. That was also one of the major changes that we see, from a changing landscape standpoint. And then tools and technology, most often, when we did our traditional ways of testing, they did have tools, they did not have tools. It was not mandated, although it was good to have. But then, from a DevOps standpoint, from an agile DevOps standpoint, it became extremely important that for continuous integration, we have adequate tools and technology that support us. So, apart from this, I'd like to kind of, I did my digging further. Okay, I took the story down. I started talking to people within the organization, outside the organization, and still in the process of understanding what DevOps from a testing perspective means. So here is a team that supposedly is testing, doesn't really know it is doing agile. It's just testing. I have a set of business analysts that are churning out requirements into user stories. Okay? And I have a set of developers who are understanding these user stories, trying to create code out of that. And then, what surprised me, there's also another team there sitting down with them. I asked them, what do you guys do? They say, we are trying to understand the developers' user stories so we can do our own coding. I said, what are you guys doing in the testing arena? I mean, you're a tester, but you're sitting here in the development room. You're trying to understand it. They said, yes, this is how we do it. We are trying to see if we can actually shorten down the release, the entire process of development and testing so we can do it together. I want to understand, I want to validate what the developer is doing. That's why I'm sitting with him, so that I can create my test story, so to speak, in the way that will help me validate this test. So that was an interesting aspect for me. I was like, yeah, this is something really different. I mean, this is something that I did not see in my traditional testing days. So there are these engineers that help sit with the developer, that break the code, that write code to break their code, the developer's code. Then there was also another unique set of people sitting down and understanding and writing automation scripts. So I said, who are you guys? These guys are the ones that actually run your smoke regression testing once the build is complete, or once the developer's area, the area of development is complete, so to speak. So now this is the way we saw it doing, the development happening. They had continuous coordination, collaboration, and communication happening in the same room, wherein you had a set of developers, just like Kartika had said. You had a set of developers sitting, had a set of QA guys sitting, and they were actually talking to each other without literally blaming each other or at loggerheads. That was very interesting. So, and each of them had their roles very clearly carved out for them. So the business analyst knew exactly where his role ended. The developer knew what he had to do. The automation engineer, internally in Dell we call them software developer, engineer, and test. These are the guys that sit down with the developers and continue coding so they can break the code. So these are the guys who knew exactly where their job ended. They were absolutely guys with development knowledge who would understand what the developer was going to code. So then we have the normal guys, the quality engineers who do all the scripting, who run the batch process or the batch tests and stuff like that. So each one of them had clarity in their role and their responsibility, and they were working in tandem. Well, that is, I think, one of the most important aspect when an organization is moving into a DevOps mode of operation. So now, after having spoken to all these people, I kind of tried to put all this thing together to understand what is it that an organization, a testing organization, should do in order to be able to enhance your DevOps transformation, in order to be able to be an enabler. If you want to enable DevOps transformation, what is it a testing team should do? What are the 3-4 change drivers that you would need? Most importantly, you would need tools and technology. Obviously, any transformation to DevOps is incomplete without tools and technology. We have already heard that in a lot of detail. And the second most important aspect is the people aspect. So you need a huge culture transformation come in, and has to be coming right from the top. So things like giving a push from the management, some mailers, campaigns, or making some trainings mandatory. So these are things that have to be incorporated so people can understand why we are doing what we are doing today. Okay. So and the other important thing would be to make that shift. So there are a lot of developers who probably are not willing to do testing. I mean, it's not in their arena of work. So that way it's important for us to kind of get them to work together in collaboration and in coordination. So this is also another important thing from a people standpoint and from a process. Yeah, there's always process, there's a lot of governance, there's a lot of shift left we're talking. But what is important is, from a DevOps transformation perspective, it is important that we create very crisp processes that do not really bring down the team's morale. So a lot of times if we have to implement a lot of processes, the first hitch would be, do I have to follow these templates? Do I have to do this? So somewhere you get that inertia of implementation. So that is where we'll have to create a governance, a framework which is important, that is really very crisp for all of us to follow. So that's the process standpoint. From a tooling, yes, early stage automation. We need early stage automation in every aspect. be it upstream or downstream, that goes along with testing, the in-sprint automation, the test automation, using all types of tools, be it requirement management tool or test management tool or a test modeler, okay, and then all your performance related, framework related stuff, everything has to be put in order to be able to make the transformation easier. So from a Dell standpoint, I'd like to just take a minute to tell what we do. While recommendation from our people, while we say culture is extremely important, we have a lot of campaigns wherein our senior management talks to, identifies groups of projects that are ready for transformation, go talk to them. We have mailers, we have one-on-one sessions, on-flow talks. And then similarly, on a training and a certification perspective, we have an internal certification program called Software Developers, Engineers and Test, which is right now mandated for all of us within the testing organization. All of us have to sit down, undergo certain set of trainings, and then take an exam and something like that. So that's where all the concepts of how developer and the tester, all the concepts of C# or whatever is required on job is taught to them and then kind of upgraded. So skill upgradation is the next thing that we are looking at. And then from a continuous skill upgradation perspective, like we already said, SDET, we've made it compulsory for everybody within the organization to undergo a boot camp, where not only we have SDET, we also have other programs wherein we get to talk to each other. There are case studies that are discussed. There are people, we bring in experts to kind of talk to them and tell them what this is all about. So that's the three very important aspects that we need to focus on in order to be able to put an organization on DevOps testing path, so to speak. So now, if everybody, if an organization be testing, I think this is pretty generic for all of us, although I would want to focus only on testing. If we are all interested for our organizations to move DevOps, then what are the three things? What is the path to transformation? Obviously, we'll have to assess our current state, be it test maturity, process maturity, what are the current processes in line, what are the current baselines, and then what do you think we can quickly achieve, the short-term wins and the long-term wins, and then try to build a framework. This could be a DevOps test framework, this could be a DevOps framework, so to speak, including testing, that will talk about the kind of technology changes that have to be brought in, the kind of trainings and the kind of processes that have to be brought in. And most importantly, for a DevOps transformation, it has been observed, and I think all of us agree, that we need not have extremely heavy processes in place. A very simple, crisp process that is enabled by a tool would be the way to go in case we want to go DevOps. And finally, you have to also deploy your ideas. It could be automation. You have to make certain investments in terms of the culture change, in terms of all the mailers that you're talking about, in terms of all the processes change. Process change always comes with a lot of, there's a lot of people don't accept it very easily. So organization, in fact, you will have to make the changes right from the top of the organization and deploy a pilot and see if it works for you. If it works for you, obviously you go PDCA, which is the plan to check act. You continue, you iterate, and then you, while just as Kartika said, maybe the measurement could be anything. It could be your unit of measurement could be different for a development team or for a testing team or a team that is undergoing the DevOps to test, the development to operation. Your unit of measure could be different, but ultimately you have to get better in what you do. So you have a baseline and you keep comparing with the baseline and see what best you can do. Try to make it different, try to change it a little bit. Don't go the big bang approach, slightly change, tweak, and then see if it really works for you. So that's how the entire story of my understanding DevOps and then applying into testing really culminated into this 4 or 5 different slides that I've just spoken about. So for me, if an organization has to tread the path of DevOps transformation, then you have to follow the 3 C's, which is coordination, collaboration, and communication. You have to do it efficiently, effectively, and also, very importantly, very continuously. It has to be continuous. It has to go on. So that's my very short discussion that I wanted to have with you this afternoon. I'm open to any questions at this point.
Thank you, Kavitha. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, hi. This is Madhu here from Wipro. I just have a quick question. See, when it comes to DevOps, in the purest view, we have heard many times in terms of rotation between development and operations team.
Correct.
Of course, I'm assuming
Yep.
some of them will be covering it. So what happens in testing? Is it make sense to have your developer and tester rotated? Does it make sense? What's in your view from what you've seen?
Yeah. See, first of all, if there is a culture change, right? If there's a culture change, you're actually thinning the line between development and testing as far as your TDD methodology is concerned. If you, like I spoke, there is a developer guy sitting along with a tester guy. In such a scenario, if the tester understands that the developer and tester are in tandem, they will be able to do it. It really should not be a problem. But then what you need to understand is the development guy will actually be doing his part of the work from a development perspective, where the tester will actually be trying to break the code. I think it is possible to rotate if it's only in the mindset. If the folks you're testing and the development folks are ready to do an interchange of their roles, that should be possible in the very early stages of the cycle that we spoke about. But then when it comes to the QA environment, when people are really doing, when they are breaking, the integration tests are happening, I don't think you can bring in a developer there and ask him to do smoke testing or regression or a build testing or something like that.
See, in the futuristic DevOps view or readiness of an enterprise, are you saying that a developer-tester combination, which is you're going to swap or rotate, is a good to have or is it a need to have when you talk about enterprise being ready for it?
No, it is definitely at this point when I talk about now, it is a good to have, but at a certain point in time, it may be a need to have basis when all of us start looking at a DevOps transformation on a whole as the way to go. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, one more from there.
Hi, I am Vikram. How do you handle test data management into this practice?
Well, at this point in time, the group that is actually doing test data management, currently they have an external party that is actually giving them data. That's the reason why I did not bring in test data. I know that's a very important topic here, or rather a topic there's a lot of controversies around it and a lot of questions. But right now, from whatever experience that I could internally find and speak to, test data was being done by a completely different unit that was actually giving data. And a lot of times, you see customers giving you test data. So they give you bills and they ask you to run a test. So in such cases, I don't think it's an issue at all. But then internally, in this case that I spoke about, they were actually there was a separate group that was taking care of test data as well as the build and deployment. So it was slightly segregated from this mode of testing. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. To thank Kavitha and present her a memento, I would like to request Mr. Ramesh Iyengar to kindly come on stage.